and learn. So welcome everybody to the second session for week 9. We are going to be looking at flows, and this time we're going to be doing it with Trailhead. So I hope you're all logged into Trailhead and ready to have another pop at flow for this week. There is some homework, and I've posted Monday night's lesson up. Apologies for it being a little bit late. I posted it all up today for you and added some more projects to the homework. So if you're following along with us online, you just need to come to bit.ly/learn-sf-free, and under week 9 you will see, if you click homework and recordings, find week 9, you'll see session 17, an introduction to flow, which Howard very kindly took us through. And then there are a couple of homework badges to do. One is to finish off the recruiting app automations, and the second is a project to build a simple flow to capture and update contact information. Howard has very kindly also shared with us some flow resources. So he's sent some blog posts, some conceptual information, and he sent the app exchange listing to a number of flows that you can download and install in your own orgs. So he has done that very kindly. Oh, excuse me. It's rather late in the day. So if you're not sure where to find that information, you just come to, hopefully you can see my screen. You just come to the homework section, look for week 9, you'll see the session recording, and you'll see the 2 homework activities there. So without further ado, let's go ahead and do some Trailhead. We're going to go ahead and work with a couple of units. So there is, what I'd like you to do is just open up a badge which is called, what's it called? Build flows with Flow Builder. We're going to have a go at building some today together. So this is a trail called Build Flows with Flow Builder. I'm going to copy and paste the link into the chat for you so that you can follow along. Oh dear, come on. Yeah. And let's get started. So we're going to start. So build a simple flow as your homework. So we're going to skip over that. We're going to have a look at flow basics to begin with. So if you click on flow basics and get started with flows, it says 10 minutes, but we'll be walking through it. And if you have any questions, then you're most welcome to ask. So over time, obviously, it's when organizations have business requirements, they can sometimes be quite unique. So we use the power of the platform to actually customize the way that the organization is, we use Salesforce, the Salesforce platform, to create an environment that will more easily bend to an organization's needs. And that is the one thing that people have enjoyed so much about Salesforce, is that you get the basics out of the box and then you can actually enhance it. And flows is a classic way that people is a classic feature that people use in order to customize customize an experience. For example, in our sandbox for my company, we have a flow that people can use to enter their timesheets at the moment. It's in the sandbox because I haven't tested it yet, but I will be testing it. But it fills in information for you that you would otherwise have to go and find. And as a result, it makes the experience better for your users. Your users, if they just know they need to put a timesheet in, they want to put the date and the number of hours and some notes, that's it. They shouldn't need to look up any other records. So the flows actually give us a good example to do that with a screen flow. Now, Howard talked us through on Monday the types of flows that you can have. You can have a screen flow or an auto-launched flow. Back in the day, whenever we wanted to make magical things happen in Salesforce, for example, post a chatter automatically, or automatically submit a record for approval, then when it's approved, then do a call out to another system. When you get the response back, maybe spin off an email based on that response, etc., and have it follow certain steps, you would have to use code. You would always have to use code. So you would sit for a while, build a specification, plan out how you wanted it to work, and then employ or hire a contractor or an external company to actually build that code for you. Now that we have Flow so freely available and included in our applications, we can go ahead and do that ourselves. So the thing that I'm taking out of this Trailhead badge is around user experience. If a user can only do one thing, do it for them. There are many advantages to doing that. One is you increase your adoption. Your users will want to use it if it's nice and easy. But second of all, you, as an admin, you reduce the number of questions you get. And if you're supporting a large number of people, that's really a sweet spot to be. So, for example, if you always create a work order after a deal closes, is there a way of making that easier? If I have a closed won opportunity in my own org, then I actually automatically create a new project with all of the main details in it. So already the project is created against the client record straight away, and the dates are all matched up, and you know, the project type is passed over from the opportunity, and that saves so much time. So this is why automation is so important, such an important part of Salesforce. So why do Flow? If you can, try and automate as much as possible without using any kind of code. Now, there are, the reason we say that is because when you get into the realm of needing code, you then have to maintain it. You might have to plug in some switches to it so that you can switch it off if you're doing a big data load and you don't want everyone to be emailed, or, you know, there are certain, you know, Flow and business logic in general is something that you will need to consider, something that causes an impact to happen in the system. And what we try to do is make our solutions scalable. If we code using Flow, because it is better described as visual coding, you may have to understand some programming concepts, but from that point onwards, you're in a much stronger place to go and make changes and play with it, and to leave a good trail behind you. So, two big use cases: guided visual experiences like the timesheet entry that I talked about, and behind the scenes automation. And behind the scenes automation I used to use a lot at Financial Force, because there were certain activities that people did. They would create a timesheet that needed to feed into a different part of the system, like the accounts package. It needed to actually make a note of the cost of that timesheet and put it in, and the revenue of that timesheet, and put it into a work in progress account in the accountancy package. So, you know, we used Flow to do that. We also used Flow to automatically produce invoices. We used Flow to produce goods receipts from timesheets and expenses against a purchase order, so that another part of the system that was coded could run a three-way match. So there are lots of different reasons that you would use Flow. So if your business process needs input from a user, you can use a Lightning component, which is which is just a block where you that you drop onto your Lightning page, and you can perform the function that it does. Oh God. But also you can use a screen flow to take people through a process, almost like a wizard process. So we're going to start with so there's a few kind of words that you need to know. So we talk about Lightning Flow is basically the same thing as Flow. The way that Trailhead describes this is that Flow is an application that automates a business process by collecting data and then doing something in your org or an external system. And Lightning Flow is the product that encompasses building, managing, and running flows and processes. Okay, fine. And Flow Builder is the point and click tool that we use to build flows. So Okay, so as a Salesforce admin, you've been lobbying your stakeholders to invest in automating more of your business processes because there are efficiency improvements that are offered by that. So your company's head of sales asks you to improve the efficiency of the sales team. So when your sales reps logs contacts in Salesforce, they often ignore many of the fields, which results in unreliable data and rogue accountless contacts, so orphan contacts. These are contacts that are not related to an account. And to make matters worse, the sales reps are creating duplicate contacts, and they can avoid this by searching Salesforce before they create the contact, but they never do. Let's be honest. And that's actually a mantra that we always say to people, is to search for the record first. But in reality, people don't, especially if they're in a bit of a hurry. So one of the things you can do is create a flow to guide them through that process so that they don't have to go searching. So let's break it down. We are going to capture values for only the required fields on the contacts. That's the first name and the last name and the account. So it's very, very, very simple in this use case. If there's a matching contact, update the existing one. So what we end up doing is drawing almost like drawing a small diagram to plan out what we want to happen. So first of all, we've got a contact. In fact, why am I drawing this here? Forget it. My keyboard's being silly. So all we want our flow to do is to start. We want it to go and we want it to capture some data. So you put the first name and last name in the account. Then we put in a decision and we say, is there a matching contact? Yes or no? If there is one, just update the existing one. If there isn't one, then just create it. It's dead easy. So what that means is there's obviously we've got to capture the data first. So that's the screen. Then we've got to go and get records. If records are returned, then we just copy and paste the data from those records into the existing one. If not, we copy and paste them into a new. So the way I'm seeing it is you've only got a few little boxes in there. So once we finish this, it's good to confirm that it's actually happened. It builds trust with your users and helps them to know that they've actually done it. And then we confirm what happened by posting onto Chatter and confirm to the user that the process is complete. So since the whole point is that we are doing things automatically, we need to build a solution that enables people to choose and perform different actions depending on the choice they make. Now, obviously, to do that, we need information from the user. So we need a form that's going to capture that information. So let's look at how we do this. So your solution, if you use quick actions, you get the form, but you don't get any conditional logic and actions, right? So if you do a quick action for create contact, you can't then tell Salesforce to go and look for the match for the existing one, okay? What you can do is actually create a duplicate rule and have it actually display an error to say, or even block the creation of the contact because it already exists. But that is going to get more users fed up more than anything, and they'll come running to you with questions saying, Salesforce is broken, it keeps giving me this error message, blah blah blah. So we could use a quick action, but the trade-off is we don't get that conditional logic. If we use flow, we will get the form and we will get the logic. If we use a lightning component, we will also get a form and we will get the logic. Why would we choose flow over lightning components? Well, lightning components are coded, so you need a developer to write the page and also to write the actions and functions that sit within the elements on that page. Whereas a flow is something that we can do ourselves without needing a developer. So, quick quiz: when should you build a flow? A, every time you hear the word automate. I might come and smack you if you do that. B, when simpler tools don't fit your requirements. C, when you're bored with Process Builder. Or D, when you want to code. Yeah, I think it's B as well. I'm going to lock that one in. 2, what's the difference between Lightning Flow and Flow Builder? So Flow Builder is a part of Lightning Flow. B, Lightning Flow is a part of Flow Builder. C, Lightning Flow is the fastest version of Flow Builder. And D, Flow Builder isn't available in Lightning Experience, but Lightning Flow is. I am going to take a guess that it's A. You will now make all flows when you hear automate. Smashing it. Okay, let's see. Do I get my 100 points? Woohoo! I got 100 points. Amazing. So I'm going to tackle the next unit. Everyone clear with that one? Yay, I got some points. Well happy. So this Flow Builder looks really different to what it was when I first started using it. We used to have this really old looking interface, and I had just got myself to the point where I was okay with it when they changed the interface, and they simplified it massively. Believe it or not, it was much more complicated before, with very little resource around to teach you how to make the best of it. So let's have a little tour around Flow Builder. On the left, you've got your toolbox. Within that, you've got 2 tabs, Elements and Manager. Elements is basically like these boxes that appear on the screen here. So you've got a screen element, you've got a decision element, you've got an element which is querying, so go and find some records. You've got another element for creating records, and then you've got a final element for the screen, and then you've got an action as well. From the Manager tab, you can create resources like variables, choices, and stages, or you can just look at a list of all of the ones that you've already got in there. The canvas is the working area, so that's this area here. And believe me, this person has them all perfectly lined up. It's very easy to get OCD about how you lay out your elements. I like nice straight lines, but I also have a practice where if there's a decision, I take a step, I move my decision down, and then I do the next bit. And if there's another decision, I move it down, and then I do the next bit. I like to have things laid out hierarchically. Then you have your button bar, which gives you information about the flow. So this is up here. So no, I'm talking rubbish. No, I'm not actually. It is up here. So you can see whether it's active. You can practice running it. You can debug it. You can save it, or you can save a copy of it. Then you have runs the most recently saved version of the flow that you have open. And debug lets you enter values and display debug details when you're running the flow. So back in the day, the only way you could really test flows was to build it, activate it, come out of flow completely, go and find a record, add some data to it, and then hit save. And if it failed, you'd get a message on the screen saying, "Duh, it's failed." But you'd be like, "Well, why is it failed?" You then had to go and check your email, because in your email you get this great big long email with the debug in it. Now they've changed that. They've actually put the debug behind a button so you can check it as you go, which is way better. So building blocks, you have 3 building blocks. You have your elements, so like your screen, your query, and your create element. You have your connectors, so these are the lines in between, and then you have your resources, and your resources are things like your variables, or what are you actually setting so it could be your Picklist values as well. So if you're setting an industry to a literal value, you can select it from that resource, which is a Picklist value. Elements appear on the canvas. Connectors define the path that your flow takes when it runs. So you've got to make sure that your connectors are joined up to the right elements at the right time. And then your resources, think of them as containers. They actually represent a value. So they could be a formula, they could be a field value. So as I said the other day, they're like fields, but they're not, if that makes sense. They're just temporary holding areas. The way I described flow when I was teaching someone a few years ago was to actually have, like, I went and got 4 mugs, and I said, right, these mugs are variables because, you know, they all hold liquid, but the liquid could be tea, it could be coffee, it could be vodka, you know. So they are, so So they are variables, and then the liquid that goes in is the data that gets passed through those variables and is used to execute the flow. So your screens display data, or they allow users to input data. One vodka mug, please. Yes. Well, at this point, I've got tea in a Starbucks mug. So, and it is going cold. So I shall have to drink it fairly quickly because I hate cold tea. So on your screen, you can capture first name, last name. You can look up an account. You know, and as you can see for this use case, there's a screen that is collecting that, and then you've got like they put a button on it that says if this exists, then update the existing one. So it gives the user an element of control over what happens. This is all stuff that you can just design and build in Salesforce, right? Without having to write horrible lines of code. But you will need to have a logical mindset to design it. You can display text, you can display images, you can merge different field values and bring in other resources into your text. Then the next thing that you have is your logic. So once you've got the data that you need, what are you going to do with it? And you can create branches, you can update data, you can loop over sets of data, or you can pause until you need to pick it up later on. So your logic only happens in flow. And from what Howard was showing us the other day, he actually had some nested flows. He had some common use cases that were set up as a very simple flow that then could be dropped into other flows to act as a subflow. Your actions, they instruct the flow to do something outside of itself. So something in the database or into an external system. So you can look up, you can create, update, and delete Salesforce records. So in the traditional database terminology, that would be a trigger. It would be a trigger actually in Salesforce in the olden days when you can still create triggers, but now you don't have to because you can do it in Flow. But effectively, triggers just work with the database. They can also create chatter posts. You can submit records for approval using an action in a flow, and you can send emails using actions in a flow. Your connectors, they define the path that the flow takes as it runs. So they basically say, this is you're going to run this element first, then it's connected to this element, which you're going to do next, etc. So now that we've done this, we've got to plan out our flow a little bit. So you do need to do this, and the way I like to do it usually is through lucid charts. I have been known to just design flows on the back of an envelope before now, or on a whiteboard, whatever you have to hand and whatever tool you want. So let's look at the requirements that we've got. So the first requirement is let's collect some information from the user. Oh, I wish I could just hide that. Anyway. So what do we need to do that for? What do we need in order to do that? We need to use a screen. We then need to find a matching contact record. So we're going to use an action for that. We're then going to check if a matching record was found. So we need to actually have logic for that. That's a decision. That's, did this happen, yes or no? If it did, then do this. If it didn't, then do that. So that's your logical flow. If no match exists, then create the account. So that's another action. If the match exists, update that account. That's another action. And for both branches, we've got to confirm what the flow did in Chatter, which is a useful way to troubleshoot as well. Because if you don't get anything in Chatter, you can tell where the process fell over, whether it fell over before the chatter post was created, or whether it's the wrong chatter post that was created. You can figure out roughly what's happened. Then for both branches, confirm that the flow has been done. So that's a screen, and it ends the process. So to build a flow to address those, then there are there's a whole trail that's got projects and modules in it, but I just wanted us to cover this quiz first. So let's do the quiz. Number 1, a flow connector. A tells Salesforce which flow to start next. B tells the flow which resource to create next. C tells the flow which element to execute next. Or D tells the flow which external database to connect to. Okay, we're all saying C. I'm going to lock C in. Number 2, flow elements can be broken down into A, guided visual processes behind the scenes automations and approval automations. B, screens, logic and actions. C, logic, actions and connectors. And D, variables, choices and stages. So guided visual processes behind the scenes automations and approval automations is basically the types of flow that you can have. And not quite right. Approval automation is more of an action. B, screens, logic and actions, flow elements. Yes, because you screen or your decision or your action. Yeah. Logic, actions and connectors. Well, connector is not an element. Variables, choices and stages. Well, they're resources. So let's go for B. And you're all saying B. Nice. Okay, check the quiz. Oh, yeah. Oh, look at that confetti. It's so pretty. Okay, I'm telling the world about it. Okay, so congratulations. Oh, yeah. We've all got new shiny badges. So let's have a look at the next one. Oh, I'm not logged in. Gosh darn it. Anyway, I think since I got my fancy new screen, my poor MacBook Air is like, what are you doing to me? That one. Log in and detweet. Okay, wonderful. So now we're going to move on to another module, which is called Flow Builder. So I'm going to copy and paste the link into the chat for you. I'll scroll down a bit and make sure I'm keeping up to date. Well done, everybody. We've got a new badge already. So let's learn about flow resources and variables in a little bit more detail and get to know the builder. And this is another quiz. So before we start, it says make sure you complete the Build a Simple Flow project. Well, that's your homework. So we'll see. Let's see how we get on. So resources, we talked about them being placeholders, similar to merge fields, or if you take the example of the mug, the empty mugs, they're going to hold something at some point. So usually they are holding data. The data is picked up, scrambled around a little bit, and then it exits the flow, and then the flow is empty again, ready to receive the next record that it executes on. So let's say you start an email with hi, first name as a placeholder. You know, like hi Gemma or hi Cat. So it wouldn't be hi Cat. That's an example of hard coding, because if you send that email to everyone, it's going to say hi Cat. So what do? We want to make it dynamic, and we want to put a placeholder in. So we use a resource to do that, so that whichever contact record you run this for, you will always get hi and the username, the user's first name. So you can actually reference these resources instead of manually entering things. So a couple of basics: constants. So these are a fixed value. A constant could be 1. Oh, Kat says all emails should greet me. Yes, well, I quite agree. But you might have to put it in like white text, or the same color text as the background. So you can use a constant to represent a fixed value. So remember the power of 1 stuff that we did, where we wanted to count the unique number of records. A constant is the default. Remember, we went and put a default value into the text field, and we set it to 1 on the user. That would be an example of a constant, because it's always going to be 1. The next kind of resource: choice, picklist, choice set, or record choice set. So these are options in a screen component, and you can choose, you can actually set the label and value. So even if your field name, let's say you've got a picklist field that's called one thing, you can actually relabel it as something else in the flow screen. Oh, so sorry, I don't know why I'm yawning. Anyway, so with a choice resource, you set the options label and value, and your choice sets actually generate choices for you. So it could be a filtered list of records, or it could be the values of a pick list or multi-select pick list field in your org. So for example, you need to select an associated account. This is a record choice set, so that you can just look up the account in here. So if you want to generate an option for each account record, then the record choice set uses the default filters. Oh, okay. To generate an option for each account record in your org, uses default filters. If every choice consists of two components, a label to display in the screen component and a value to use when the choice is referenced elsewhere. I'm sorry, that was a lot of words. The way this choice set is configured, the screen component displays the account name for each. They've lost me. I'm going to have to do it. So basically, when the flow user selects an account, then they have to configure the type of choice that they're going to have. So if the choice is name, then actually the data type and value is going to be ID, because that's what the flow needs in the background in order to map and store account fields. So let me just see. So this is for each record that meets the conditions. The flow creates a choice using values from the records. Then which fields do you need to use for the choices, label, and value? So if you're showing the name, then it will show the ID, and then we say where we're going to store it. Then we have the formulas. So these represent a calculated value. So if you want to do opportunity, let's say you're setting an opportunity close date from scratch, you can use a date. You can use today's date plus 30. So that's a good formula field. Example, text templates. You can represent some formatted text. You can format the body of an email. And then a variable, and a variable is a value that can change. So a variable is actually the mug example, where the mug is the variable because it is the container for the data. Now the data is it's called a variable because a mug can hold any kind of liquid, or solid even. But anyway, it's a variable because it's a container that that fits many different things. So variables, they do make you think of algebra classes for sure, but they are important to understand, and you don't need to know anything about programming or maths or anything in order to do this. So a variable is a placeholder for a value you don't know yet. I still think of the mugs. Anyway, so every flow resource is a placeholder, but variables are the only resource that can change during the flow. So it might start off, the account ID might be one account record ID and at the beginning of the flow, and then towards the end, it might be a completely different one in your variable. So when do you create them? You use a variable based on when values can differ. So if the value depends on where you're running the flow from, then you need a variable to hold that ID. And you can pass that in using screen flows anyway, and you can pass it in using Process Builder. You can't reference a field from a Salesforce directly, so you have to actually go and get it and store it into the flow itself using a variable. Okay, so that's why we use them so often. You can't just say go and select all, select account ID where, or select account IDs where industry equals consultancy. You will have to, and then it just immediately show results. You're going to have to go and get all those records and then pick them up in a list, and then copy and paste that list into a collection variable, which is a container for multiple records. For example, in the build a discount calculator project, you've got a flow here that updates an opportunities discount. Not every opportunity gets the same discount. It depends on what the revenue is for the account. So your variable acts as the placeholder for the discount percentage and then is set to a different percentage based on logic. So from what I can see here is you have a decision here that's saying determine the discount. So you'll have full discount where it's 10%, or you'll have no discount where it's 0%. And what you're doing here is saying, you know, depending on depending on the outcome of the decision, we're going to do a bit of maths here. and then we're going to assign it into an update here. Oh, there's a partial discount as well. Okay, so a lot to take in there. Let's have a look at the quiz. So a choice set can generate options with A, formulas, B, filtered records, C, picklist field values, or D, B and C. I think it's D. What do you guys think? Let's see, I'm going to put it as D. Remember earlier it said a choice set. So a choice set could be a list of records or it could be some pick lists. Number 2, a variable. A is a kind of element in a flow. B stores a value you can change in a flow. C stores a value that stays the same throughout the flow. Or D can be changed with a decision element. Okay, so we're saying B. So yes, stores a value you can change in the flow. Quick question. Looking at C, stores a value that stays the same throughout the flow. What would we call that? That's right. It is a constant. Yeah, because it doesn't change. And a quick recap. What's an element? What's it? Can you give me an example of an element in a flow? Yes, that's right. It could be a screen. It could be create record. It could be decision or a screen, according to Kat. So logic isn't, yes, logic, definitely. So logic is like the decision. That's the same. The two words are used interchangeably. Okay. And obviously we can't store, we can't change a variable with a decision element because a decision element just makes a choice. It's logical. It doesn't do any updates or actions. So let's check the quiz. Ah, yeah. Okay, moving on. How are we doing? 40 minutes in. Prepare to create a variable. So before you create your variable, figure out what kind of data it's going to have in it. Is it going to be text? So you can use text to store IDs, descriptions, other text or long text data. I actually tend to use text variables for IDs the majority of the time. Records, so you can store field values from a record, like an opportunity. That's not very well explained, is it? When this data type is selected, you create a record variable. Fine. Okay. So field values from a record. Numbers is obviously a number. Currency, Boolean is yes or no. So if something was selected, yes or no. A date and time. I like my cup analogy too. It works well. I actually, at one point, I think, because I'm quite a physical learner or a visual learner, when I was explaining it to someone at work a couple of years ago, I had four mugs in a row and I had a pencil. In fact, I had two pencils. I had a red pencil and a grey pencil. And I showed this pencil moving from one cup to the next and following that logic. And it was easier for people to understand. Pick lists, multi-select pick lists, or field values from an Apex class. Woohoo! So you can actually run Apex's Salesforce's proprietary coding language. Similar to C#, I've heard. I just need to check on that. But you can run some code from a flow. And also you can run flows from code as well using invocable methods. Yes, no, other way around. So you can actually, yes. So you can actually run a piece of Apex using an invocable. If you include an invocable method in your Apex class, you can actually run it from a flow. Yeah. My friend Amnon sings songs about invocable methods. Happy to share that with you at the end of the class. Anyway, so how many values should your variable store? So by default, you store one value that is compatible with the selected data type. So if it's a number, you store a number. If it's text, you store text, you know, and your ID is treated like a string /number /text, sorry. If the data type is record, then you'll be storing field values for that one record. So if you need to store multiple values in a variable, then you create what's called a collection variable. And all that is it's just a collection of mugs. So instead of having one mug, you have like two. This is my collection variable. And I will have two records, if you like, one in each variable in the collection. And it's those situations, they're the times when you kind of need to, if you need to do things, individual things to individual records within a collection, that's where you kind of have to start building loops, because you have to go, okay, what's in here? I'm going to loop through here. What's in here? If I find this, then I'm going to do that, then it leaves. If I'm going to find this, then I'm going to do that, then it leaves. And you just keep looping through until you've run out of objects in the variable, and then you can do what? You can go on to the next bit. Whew, I'm hot. So we don't do a lot about this in this module, but there is a project that you can practice using them in. So should your value be available from outside the flow? Well, you've got to get some data into your variable from somewhere. So the main place is that you tend to, I mean, every flow has to start with some data. So you usually have one variable, which is the concept of like this record. So if I run this flow from this project record, I need to go and get the project ID and stamp it into the project ID variable in order for the rest of the flow to work. Because if it's just blank, it's just going to, I don't know what you're supposed to, I don't know what you're asking me to do, to what record. So you can pass an ID for that project into a flow using either just somebody looking at it on a screen and putting it in and selecting it from a record choice set. Or you can actually be really fancy with it and you can have Process Builder run and call your flow. And in Process Builder, you can say, you can put some of your upfront logic. So like if this record is changed and it's of this type of project, then run this flow, which is going to do this and that and the other and logic and if that and then and everything else. But you can pass the project ID into your flow directly from Process Builder in order to make that work. Done this many times, not recently, but many times. These days I don't get to get this hands-on with flow, so this is a helpful refresher for me. Some variables get the values from inside the flow as well. So either your user's putting something in or they're selecting it from a record choice set, or you actually are in your flow, you're saying, go and get this data from this object using this ID as a way to do it, and then populate this new variable with what you find. So, so what Howard was showing us the other day with the available for input and the available for output fields, the available for input means that you can pass IDs, you can pass information into a variable from outside the flow and then use it to inform the rest of it. And then available for output is if you're daisy chaining several flows together and you need to make sure that, let's say you need that same project ID to then go to another flow, you can make it available for output so that it can be called from another flow. Oh my God. So, okay. So, I think I'm good there. So if whatever starts the flow should be able to set the value of a variable. Ugh. Make sure the variables, yeah, okay, whatever. So when you configure your variable, yes, I've covered that. So where do you plan to use the variable? So there's a hot tip here that says pay special attention to which data types the field supports and whether it supports single values or collection values. If you already know where to review documentation. Okay, let's go and have a look at this kind of hands-on. I'm going to go into my hands-on org. It's up to you. If you want to follow along, you're more than welcome to. You don't have to. Okay, I'm going back into my Learn Salesforce with Gemma Playground. Actually, no, screw it. I'll use, no, we'll use this one. Resourceful Wolf. feed. So into Flow Builder from Setup. So we just go and find the feature called Flows. And then in the meantime, I'm just going to close down some, because Chrome is a hungry beast. So I'm going to close some tabs. Yeah, close that. There we go. We're using a little less CPU. Only a little. Okay, so Flow. Oh, I didn't even go into Setup. Come on. Come on. You can do it. What have I done? I know, I'm sorry. It's my Mac is struggling a little bit. I'll turn the other screen off. Hopefully that will help. So under Setup, start typing Flow with a W, not an E. And I'm going to click Flows under Process Automation. It's quite possible that because I recently cleared my cache, it can make things a little bit slower up front and then it goes quicker afterwards. Okay, new flow. So you'll notice it opens up Flow Builder in a new tab. And we're going to create a screen flow. So, and here is where Howard said you can get your templates from as well. If you don't want to sit and build it all, there are some canned ones that you can use. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to pull in an element, a screen element, and all we do is just pick it up and drag it in. And then up will pop the usual stuff. So what do we call our screen? What's its API name? Do we show a header and footer? Do we want to provide any help and support to somebody who's using that screen? And then on the left, we can see all the different components that we want to bring in. So if we want to display some text, if we want to put in a toggle or a link or a lookup, etc., then we can do that. So we're going to create a new resource. Okay, yeah. So why did I pull in a screen? We're going to create a new resource. So we go into Manager and we can create a new resource. So this is where we select what are we going to use. We're going to use a record choice set, a stage, or a text template, or a choice, or a constant. We're going to use a variable. And all we have to do here is just give it a name. So we're going to call this enter an API name and description. So and then select a data type. So if I just called this opportunity ID, for example, and learn to type op ID. What I actually try and do with these variables is because sometimes I might pick up multiple record IDs. So I try and contextualize it with my labels, and I might call this opportunity ID. And then later on, I might create a renew. So like if I was, for example, if I was creating a renewal opportunity process, I could say, here is the original opportunity ID that I'm passing through. And then I'm going to store it because maybe I want to use it later to link my new opportunity to the old one as a renewal. In fact, that's a great use case. Anyway, so the op that started this whole thing. So because it's an ID, I'm just going to use text. That's all I want. Now, multiple values is if you were going to create, if you were going to say, go and get all these opportunities, store them in this collection so I can use later. But I'm not going to do that. Now, I also have a nasty habit of just clicking both these because, like, I've broken flows before when I've struggled to decide. So I just got myself into a bad habit of just clicking input and output for all of it. Don't do what I do. Be cleverer. Anyway, and so now you can kind of see, yeah, you can identify the variables availability outside the flow. So if I think I might pass this opportunity ID into another flow later on, or I'm going to put subflows into this, you know, then you can make it available for output. I do like to cover the bases. Okay, I've got a few questions coming through. Open up or comments. 10 hours later. Do you have a, so Jeremy, do you have a handy way to think about the difference between a variable created for the flow and a variable fetched from some object or field in the org? I find it pretty confusing. Sometimes it seems like they're connected tightly, other times not so much. For me, it's labeling for sure. If I label my my variables in a sensible way, that's how I kind of remember, but also draw, for God's sake, draw what is supposed to happen before you do it. You can always, because that's your baseline, that's what you're trying to achieve. And then you can make changes to it as you go. Do you have any way to think about the difference variable created for the flow and variable fetch from some in or yeah, labels for sure. Does that answer your question, Jeremy? Think so, yeah. Okay. I'm sorry it's not the most elegant response. Okay. So now we have our variables. So you've now got a placeholder. It's just like an empty pot. It's an empty mug. This is my variable and there's nothing in it at the moment. So do I want to set a default value? Do I want to say that by default I'm always going to have water in here? Until something else gets poured into it. Do I want to get a value from a record and put that value in the variable? So when you configure get records or a record choice set, you can say which fields you want to store in. Okay, right. So using an example of, this is going to get weird. If you think about when you have fresh milk that's not been pasteurized and you have kind of several layers to it, bear with me. This is going to probably be weird, but this is how I'm visually thinking of it. You've got a big pot of milk, and after a while, when it's been left to stand, the milk will drop to the bottom and you'll end up with cream on top. This is going to get really weird. When you configure your get record, you can specify. So for this mug, you could turn around and say, well, I only want cream in here, even though it's come from the same container and the same cow. You've got two different versions of what's come out of that cow. Oh my God, weird. Anyway, I hope I'm making a very bad analogy, but you can, and I'm struggling to articulate it, but you can specify what parts of that element of that data that you want to put in there. So let's say you go and let's say you have a get records and then you store it in a record variable. You can actually say, when you go and get this record, I only want you to go and get the account name. I only want you to get the type, and I only want you to get the amount. So you can be more specific about that. You can change a variable's value from an element. So you can use an assignment element. An assignment element lets you kind of say, okay, I'm going to assign, before you create this renewal opportunity, I am going to use an assignment to say, okay, this field in this opportunity will in the future be known as, will be mapped to this field. Or sorry, it's like a mapping element. So you're able to say, if you see this, it means that. If you see this, it means that, and then assign that to your new record. So stage, close date, you can use an assignment to say the close date of this opportunity plus 365 is going to be the new close date of the renewal opportunity. And you can use an assignment to do that. Other elements let you store values in variables. So you can actually store a created records ID as well. So let's say you run a screen flow. Let's say once you've got your renewal record and it's been created in your flow, you can actually take the ID of the brand new renewal opportunity record, store it in another variable, which is called renewal opportunity. And then you could actually pass that into another flow or pass it into another action that creates a chatter post and says, congratulations, we've created your renewal for you and here's where you can find it. Passing a value in from outside the flow. So if you, depending on how you distribute it, you can pass a value into an input variable. So if you add the flow to a contact record page, you can pass the contact's ID into a flow variable. Okay, so that's if you do it with screens. If it's auto-launched, you can actually use Process Builder to do it. So apparently we've now got variables under our belt. So let's have a look at the element categories after we've done our quiz. So quiz, question number 1, create a text variable to store A, descriptions, B, long text data, C, formulas, or D, A and B. Skeptical Gemma is skeptical. I'm trying. Okay, so I think it's good. I'm going to try D. I think descriptions and long text is great. If it's formula, you would need to do your formula in an assignment and then assign the value to the text variable. 2, when in doubt, you should configure a variable so that it is A, available for both input and output. Yeah. B, available for input and not available for output. C, available for output and not available for input. D, not available for input or output. Why do I feel like I'm in Short Circuit, the movie? I'm going to try A. Available for both input and output. Please be right. Ah, I'm not teaching you best practice. Oh, dear. So maybe this one, actually, because yes. Okay, don't listen to me. It's B. So just make sure that it's ticked as input. Don't tick it as output, but I still tick them both. So it's completely up to you. But apparently I'm doing it wrong. Okie dokie. Everyone all right? Good. So we're halfway through. Let's go through a bit more. So screen components, just as you configure the user experience of your record pages in Lightning App Builder, which we've done a few weeks ago. Yeah, it is pretty brain melting stuff. You've just got to do it. The best way for you to learn is to actually do it. So I know you're all going to love the homework. Each screen made up of components, as we showed before, so you can add whatever you want. So I'm going to add a new element, screen element. I like the idea of making this a renewal opportunity. Why not? Create renewal. So you can use like a checkbox group, which is kind of cute. This has changed an awful lot. We never used to have cool stuff like this. You can add different choices. Look, so you could say like you could build a survey. You could say to people, do you like working here? Yes, yes, or yes. You could do dependent pick lists. You used to have an app for that, believe it or not. I remember a few years ago, I was trying to design one of these, and honestly, I just felt like crying because I was like, I've configured these dependent pick lists. I've got state and country, and if I select country, I only want these states. Is it best practices to create the variable in Manager first, says Jeremy. Create your first one in Manager first, because as you become used to working with Flow, you actually get you find further along that you're like, oh God, I need a new variable for that. So, and you tend to build them as you go. No, because you can. So you said before creating the element on the screen. No, because you can create your variables from these elements as well. So as you see here, you can create a new resource. Yeah. Oh, he says, yes. So you can just create them as you go. You don't have to keep coming out and going back in and everything else. So you can even pass in a variable into my dependent pick list, which is very exciting. Sorry. So you've got, I know you can even do file upload. I'm getting very excited. So you can see there's been an awful lot of investment from Salesforce in Flow. And you've got so much more power to create great experiences in Salesforce. I know I sound like a salesperson, but oh my God, you know, this is why I do this. I love this stuff. I'm a proper nerd. So you can say, you know, upload, file upload label. You could create a variable and have it show different things for different reasons. You know, or you could, so if you want to upload a file, you could say, are you uploading this file to this opportunity ID? You know, accepted formats. Every now and again, the chat closes. There's all kinds of things that you can put in here. I just love it. So upload data. Done. You used to have to get have code to do this. Now, obviously, I'm just doing it as I go at the moment, but you can do things like you can make it disabled or enabled. You can do hover text. You can do uploaded file names. You can you can store output values to select variables. Loads and loads of stuff you can do here. I do like this. This is very cool. So so your input, standard components that request information from the user. Display, standard components that display information to the user. And custom can be components that you or someone else has created. So you can get a developer to make you some components to use in Flow, or you can install them from AppExchange or a third-party library. Some people make free ones and put them on GitHub for you to download. And you've got this option here to get more on the AppExchange if you want to, and you can just drop them into your screen and make some really cool screens. Okay, choices. So most standard input components, they need a number or some text, but with radio buttons, pick lists, checkbox groups, and multi-selects, you have to choose from a set of options. So Salesforce has built sets and choice sets and record choice sets in order to facilitate that. So record choice set generates multiple options by using a filtered list of records. So you can, I want to play with that just quickly. So let's say I wanted to pass in an account ID as a variable and say, and in my record choice set, filter it to say, okay, I want you to show me all the opportunities that are logged against this account. You could do that using a record choice set. If I could just find it. Standard input components. For radio buttons, pick lists, etc. Okay. So using that checkbox group example. No, I'm going to do it with a pick list. Can you do it with lookups now? Whoa. You can do lookups too. Anyway, so in this pick list, I could actually say my choices are going to be a new resource, which is a record choice set, which is this ops. Can't do that. This account ops. Then I can say the object I'm going to search for is opportunities. Sorry, it's just been slow. And then I can put in a selection. So, you know, it will say a condition, sorry. So it will say, do I want to go and get all the opportunities, or do I want to do it based on conditions being met? So I could say the account ID field equals a new variable. So just to show Jeremy, scroll down. I want to create a new variable. Oh, okay, maybe I do have to go and create a new one here. That's annoying. Anyway, so my account ID could equal a variable called this account ID. and then I pass that account ID into that variable, and then I'm able to see all the opportunities. Yeah, see, it won't let me save it, so I have to come out and do it all again once I've created my variable. But anyway, so then you can kind of you can show a list of all of those opportunities that are against that account. So a choice represents a single. So a record choice is generating multiple options using a filtered list of records. A Picklist choice set is getting your values of your Picklist field. And your choice represents a single option with the label and value set manually. And then you can use an assignment to map that data. We recommend using a choice resource only when you can't use either of the other two. Record choice sets and Picklist choice sets are easier to configure, don't require as much maintenance. So the experiences, you have to look at what flow runtime experience your screen component is supported in. So there's two. There's Lightning and Classic. Lightning runtime looks and feels like Lightning experience, while Classic looks and feels like Visualforce. Okay, so Visualforce is the other coding, another traditional coding solution feature that you can use in Salesforce to produce your own record pages. So, and this really caters for the audience that are still using Classic, really. So here it just shows you, like, this is, are we running this in Classic, are we running this in Lightning, and shows you the difference in look and feel. Salesforce are just saying they're not actually enhancing Classic, so they're not investing anymore in developing stuff in Classic. They want everyone to switch to Lightning. Your screen components, they're all supported in Lightning runtime, but not all of them are supported in Classic runtime. So things like being able to gray certain buttons out, depending on what you selected in another, is using a different technology to what you get in Classic. Classic is traditional, is like server side, so it's like working with a website, and you can't make things appear and disappear if you're working with a pure server side platform. Whereas if you're but because Lightning is built on event driven architecture, whatever you click on the screen, you can actually make other things appear and disappear, and it can cause that it can influence other things on the screen, and that's what you get with Lightning. So it just tells, so this is just telling you about things that aren't available in Lightning, in Classic versus Lightning. So let's break down the screen element. We've done that. So we've had a look at, so your screen components, that's where you can add in your boxes and your clickable user input items. You then have your screen properties. So, your screen canvas, which is where you build your screen. And then your properties, so that's where you start to put in things like, are you showing the header, the footer, are you putting in particular navigation options, etc. This has come along leaps and bounds. This is all the stuff that I always wanted Flow to do for years, and it never did. And now, like, you can just see the amount of investment that's gone into this. It's incredible. So obviously now it wants you to go and build the simple Flow project in order to complete this section. Let's have a look at what it's saying. So in the new contact flow, open up the screen. From setup, enter flows, go and look at the canvas, and it's just showing you around a little bit. So your screen contains 3 components that request information about the contact. So name, account, and a toggle. And the toggle is, what do you want to do with it? Does it match? Does it already exist or not? So your name component, you can see here, we've got the API name. So we've called that, as with everything in Salesforce, we have to give it a name, even if it's a variable, even if it's, something that's on a screen, we've got to give it a name. So we're calling it contact name. It's not disabled. It's always on. And then we can actually say, these are the fields we want to display for this component. So we have first name and last name. First name, we then map the contact's first name to that element, to that component. we have an informal name, and then we have a label. We have the label. So when you look at the screen, you just see the label called name. And then you have the last name. And then finally, the property, you have another property here which says, okay, is this field going to be read-only on this screen, or can people change it? Notice you've got global constant false and global constant false up here. That's just a way, it's just Salesforce's way. It's just something you can look it up. So you don't have to type it, you don't have to remember to type it, but it's the standard way to tell Flow that you're either going to show it or not. Basically, it's your Boolean setting. So the component's not disabled, it's not read-only, it's only displaying fields for first name and last name. You can also use middle name, but you don't have to. You can also bring in a field for salutation if you want to. And the component label is name. So you only need to reference what the user put in. So the good thing about, and what you'll find when you do the homework, is that when you go to populate the first name and the last name, you can actually do it based on other things. So you can do it rather than going to look at what's in the database. You can actually say what goes in this field is what someone's already put in a previous screen. Oh my god, I'm so bad at explaining this in theory. Okay, so then let's look at the account component, which is a pick list. So we have a pick list there, and the choice is a collection variable called accounts by the looks of things. No, record choice set called accounts that's been created. Guys, what do we think? Do we want to start working on this project so that we can contextualize it? Because at the moment I'm just reading stuff out. What do we think? We've got 45 minutes left. We could make some headway on that. I like to be flexible. Anybody? Oh dear. So, you're all asleep. Wakey, wakey. Yeah, zoned out. Yeah, completely. I get it. Do we want to go through it together, everybody? Yeah, there is a prerequisite to do it. That's what I'm thinking. So let's go and give it a go, shall we? Where's the badge? Build a simple flow. Okay, let's go and do it. Why not? So it's interesting that it talks you through. Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll do the prerequisite. So this is what I'm sending you for the homework. The interesting thing is that you do the project, but then you have to go through and learn about what you've just been looking at. That's interesting. Okay, here is the link, everybody. So come and join us. We'll start for 45 minutes and then we can finish it off for homework. How about that? Let's do that. So this flow, we're going to go and produce a contact flow here. So I'm going to come out of here, come out of my flow back here. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a flow and add a screen. So if you have been following along, that's fine. Don't worry. If you haven't, let's just start from the beginning there. So you go to your setup and you type in flow. I don't know why it's sending me into classic. New flow, why not? So new flow. Okay. It's going to be a screen flow and we click create. Then from the elements tab, we're going to drag screen. So tick screen flow, click create. And then from the left, we're going to go and get a screen and just drop it onto our canvas here. So the first thing it's going to want is a label and a name. And in this flow, this is the example we're going to do here is we're going to build a flow for a contact, right? So so that users can enter a contact and if an existing one is found, then they update it or can choose to update it. And if it is new, we can choose to create it. So it's that user experience enhancement. So we start with a screen. We are going to call it contact info. And notice the API name gets picked up for you, same as it would do normally in Salesforce. Okay, then we're going to click done, and we've now got two items. So we've got start and we've got screen. At the moment, if I run this, nothing's going to happen because I've got to connect them. So to connect them, I just move my mouse, my little hand, into the circle here, and I hold down my mouse and I connect it to the circle on the next element. Okay. So that tells my flow what to do first of all. So when you first start it, you're going to open up the screen. If they're not connected, it's just going to go, where do I go? Save as you go. And we're going to call this flow, we're going to call it new contact. And save. Always save as you go because you never know when your internet will drop. Okay, if you get any warnings, just ignore them because you can read them later. There'll always be warnings while you're working on stuff, so in Flow, so don't worry too much. So you're planning to capture contact information from the user, so we need a variable to store that data first. So we're going to go into Manager. So this is what, Jeremy, to your earlier point about do you create all your variables first? Just create the first variable and then create the next ones as you go. So we're going to go into Manager in our toolbox and we're going to click New Resource. And our new resource is a variable. So you'll see that you get a different set of fields that show up. Now our variable is just going to be called contact with lowercase. And the data type, let me guess, is going to be, what is it going to be? A record. It's going to be a record. So we're going to get to choose what fields we get from the contact record. Okay. And then under object, we want to start typing contact. And just select it. Okay. Obviously, make it available for input. Best practice. See what I did there? And just click done once we've got it. So this is a single variable. We're going to go and collect a contact. We're going to inject a contact ID into this, and then we'll be able to check. We'll be able to get some additional fields from it. Okay, save as you go. Then we're going to add a name input screen. So we are going to create fields for this. So we're going to go back into our screen and we're going to type in We're going to, under search components, we're going to find name. And we're going to drag that in. Now, name is kind of a special. Oh. Okay, so name in Salesforce for contacts, it's actually made up of several fields. You've got the salutation, you've got first name, last name, middle name, potentially, and sometimes you get suffixes as well. So Salesforce has come on leaps and bounds here as well because you've got name as a collection, if you like. So what are we going to do here? Our API name is just going to be called, right, we've got name here. So we're just going to call it contact name. So contact, lowercase, and then name. Right, disabled false, we want it to be shown. Fields to display, we want first name and last name, so just leave that as default. And you can actually add more names if you want to. As you can see in the help text, you can actually add in additional field names there. for people to fill in. My office is haunted. So, and then scroll down and make sure that check manually assign variables advanced is selected. Okay, it'd be good to understand why we're doing that. Okay, that is selected, so that's good. For first name, so complete these steps to take what the user enters in the first name and last name fields and store them in the contact record variables. So for first name, select contact and then first name. So let's go and find that. So first name. Yes, I know what we're doing here. So remember the variable that we created earlier where we said we're going to create a record variable and it's just going to be called contact. Here is where we can go and get the information. We can go and get the fields that we need and assign them to this screen. So we can say single variable, and then we go and look up the first name. There we go. Notice what I did there? I started typing and then it just narrowed down my list significantly. I much prefer doing that. And then we do the same for last name. So we're going to go back to our contact record variable and click into it. And I'm just going to start typing last. And of course, I get a lot more options. So you've got to look through and find last name. So all we're doing here is for this name component, we are actually going to we're making sure that if somebody puts information in here, it gets mapped to the right field in the contact object. Okay. The next, so then once we've done that, we just hit done and we hit save. I don't expect you guys to know how to do this off by heart, like from day one. So please, if you're feeling worried or you know, I'm not holding you to any standards here. This is just, let's give this a go. It is quite advanced stuff to be doing, but at least you've had a bit of exposure to it and you know what's possible. Then we're going to create a record choice set for accounts. So we want to be able to find, when we create this contact or update this contact, we need to be able to actually, in order to avoid duplicates, which is the biggest problem we've had so far, we need to be able to find which account the contact is going to belong to. So in order to do that, we want to actually use a pick list. We're going to create a pick list and ask the users to select that account from the list. But in order to, short of going into the database and copying and pasting the name of every single account into a text field and creating a pick list choice for that and it not doing anything in the database, we've actually got a better option. We can go and get a list of all the records that meet certain criteria and make it available in a pick list for the user to select from. So we're going to go to new resource and click record choice set from this menu here. So back into our flow, back into our toolbox manager, we click new resource. Resource type is a record choice set. Now, the API name you have to give it is accounts, all lowercase and plural. And then the object is obviously the account object. So I started typing account. It's going to come up momentarily. There we go. Okay. So here is what we're doing here is just saying we're going to create a list of accounts for a user to select from. Filtering, so this is where we can go and get all of the accounts in the system for someone to look through, or we can actually just say go and get, you know, customer accounts or prospect accounts or partner accounts. The choice label is called name. Okay. What have I missed? Yeah, choice label is called name. The data type is text because we're showing a name. And our choice value is the ID. So what we're saying here is, what does the user see? The user sees a name, an account name in the list. But actually, what that looks like in the back end is an ID, because we're going to need that account ID when we go and create the record. in the future part of the flow. Okay. So once we've done that, we have another section called Store More Account Field Values. So we can go and get, we can actually get the account that the user has chosen and store its ID in the contact record variable. That's pretty smart. So for field, we select the ID. All I did was type in ID. And we're going to assign it to a variable within our contact. So in our contact, we go in and we find account ID. And all we're doing here is saying, from whatever someone selects from this list, it's going to go into the contact. Yeah, no worries, Samira. Okay, hit save. Hit done and hit save. Yeah, whatever. Okay. Then we're going to add a pick list input component. So this is where we actually create our list of accounts on the screen. So we've got to go back into the screen. And we're going to go and get our pick list and drag it underneath the name. And here is where we say, you know, what's the account? So what are we calling this one? Okay, we're just calling this account. So on the label, just call it account with a capital A. The data type is text. And then we scroll down, we find our choices. So our choice is accounts. Data type is text, no default. Okay, label is account, data type text, select accounts, hit done and hit save. Okay, everyone clear on what we've done there? So now we've created our pick list and we've populated it with some information. Then we're going to add a toggle component. So on this toggle is like a button that you ask the user to tick or to press, which says, does this contact already exist? And if it does, do you want us to update the existing account or not? Okay. It's another way for a user to choose. So we go to the screen. Notice how all your resources are building up on the left as you go. And now we want a toggle. So again, I'm just going to search for a toggle and I'm going to drop it underneath the pick list. And the name of this component is update_toggle. I'm just going to copy that and paste it. Okay. So now we get to decide what do we show if it's ticked as active? What do we show if it's ticked as inactive? And if it's shown as inactive? And what do we you know, do we want to make it? Do we want to disable it? Do we want to grey it out? So the label itself, you'll need to copy from Trailhead, which is if this contact already exists, update the existing record. So we're going to put that in our label. Okay. Because that's what's going to be shown to the user. That's your instruction to the user. Your active label is update existing. And this also gives guidance to the user because it says, you know, if you've clicked this button, this is what will happen. And then your inactive label will be create other contact. Manually assigned variables, we need to make sure is unticked. What's with this delete? Done and save. Unchecked. It doesn't warn you about that pop-up, does it? Okay. So close and open the flow. Why? Okay, so to close, I'm just going to hit back. And then I'll just reopen it. So you can see here it's shown. Yes, I know it's better in Lightning, so why do you put me in Classic? Anyway, open. Don't know why we have to close and reopen it. Anyway. Okay. So then we're going to run our flow so that we can look at what the screen looks like. So let's run. Wait for it to load. And as you can see, you've got your first name, you've got your last name, and then you've got your pick list. And look, your pick list is full of accounts that you have in your system, because that's the record choice set that you've created. Cool, huh? That's what you did. You did that. And as you can see here, you've then got your toggle. So create other contact or update existing. Okay, that's a useful preview. You built that. You built your own screen. It's fantastic. You're all programmers now. Yay. So now that we've run that, you can play with the new screen components and hit next. Anyway, so once you're ready, I'll close and open it. I know why we closed and opened it, to make sure it was committed so that the Trailhead checker could check it. So let's verify our step. And I'm probably in the wrong org, so it's going to shout at me. Yeah, I'm in the wrong org. So I will go to Learn Salesforce with Gemma. Verify step. That was a tickly cough. Cool. Tackle the next step. So now we've built our screen. What's the next thing we have to do? Well, now we have to use a get records element to find a contact, a matching contact that already exists. So we are going to go and use a new element, which is called, guess what? Get records. This is the same as running a query, an SQL query, really. And the label that we're going to use is find match. Okay, and we're going to get objects. We're going to get contact records. So I'm just going to start typing contact and wait for it to come up. Contact. And the contact, so this is where I get to define, like, what is the criteria? How do I know whether this is a match or not? And in real life, in real business life, there will be many opinions on what constitutes a duplicate contact. Some people go by email address, others go by name. You know, there's no exact science to it. Okay, so we've got that. So the condition we're going to add is that the first name equal, we're doing it by name. Okay, so the first name of the contact is equivalent to the first name of the contact that we collected in our first variable. So we're going to go here and find first name. At least I hope that's what it is. Yes, it is. Woohoo! Add condition. And the last name of the contact that we're looking through in the object matches the last name of the contact variable that we created. So remember, this is what the user's putting in. Okay. And obviously, if it doesn't find a record that matches, then it's just going to create one. The flow will create one in a later element. Okay, so when we're done, hit done and save it, just to be certain. The next thing you have to do is connect it. So connect your screen to your Get Records. I like to line them up and make them nice and neat too. And save it. Whatever. Okay, so we've done that. Then we can verify. Great, everyone. So you've created a screen and now you've written a query. So let's tackle the next step. And we're going to add some logic now. So we're going to add a decision to our flow. So back into our canvas. And under logic, there are 3 different things. And decision is the second option. So we pick up a decision and drop it over here. Now, our decision is going to be called update or create in proper case with a question mark on the end of it. Please make sure that you match all of your names exactly, because that's what Salesforce is going to be, Trailhead's going to be checking for. Okay, so once you've done that, we then have to create our outcomes. So in a decision, you can have multiple different outcomes, and your label is where you kind of say, well, you know, if this criteria is met, this is the direction it's going to go in. So the label that we're going to use for this one is called update existing. You want to try and align these labels with the outcomes that will result from it. Then and then we have to put in some we have to actually say, you know, what are the different criteria for a record to go down this route. So the condition that we're going to use, update or create, update existing, add condition and enter these conditions. So update toggle value equals true. Okay, so if the user, we're going to send it down this route if the user has obviously ticked the box to say that they want to check it, they want this logic to happen. So message toggle active. Let me just check. No, update toggle value. Okay, apologies. We want value. I'm going to have to look again because my screen just... Update toggle value. So value will be true or false, basically. So if they have said, if the user in the previous screen has said, I'm going to tick the box that says I want you to update an existing one, then then this logic will send you down the route of updating it. So really, with the toggle, you're looking at just a global constant, which is true or ticked or turned or switched. So update toggle value equals true. And then you've got find a match is null, false. So find a match is your, if you think back to that, is basically your, oh, this has got much simpler, much simpler. So add condition. You've got find a match, which is your, we say, find a match is null, false. Okay. So find, yeah, so it's okay that maybe the system's updated a little bit. So the contact from find a match, and then we just click out of it. This is interesting because what you're doing here is saying, okay, I didn't realize you could do this. I'm learning something. This is great. So what you're basically saying is, has this element, which is the find a match element, which is your get records element, has it been successful, yes or no? And we're saying, you know, if it hasn't been successful, sorry, if it has been successful, then we can, in finding a match, then we can update that, and the user wants to, we can update that existing record. So that's really interesting. I like it. So find a match is null. So that means, you know, if it's not been able to find a match, which we don't want to happen, because if it hasn't been able to find a match, we want to create a new one. So we want to send it down another route. So actually we want to go false. So we're saying if it's managed to find a match, okay, then it goes down the update existing outcome. And actually, if you only have 2 possible outcomes, good practice is just to create one outcome and then have everything else go down the other route, instead of trying to be very, very specific about both outcomes. If that makes sense. So then the next thing we have to do is we have to just go to our default outcome and give it a new label, which is called create new, with a capital letter. And when you're ready, you just hit done and save as you go. Does that make sense to everybody? So all we've done is we've created our decision. We created 2 possible outcomes of that decision. So it's like a yes or a no. And for the yes, for the update criteria, we're just checking whether there's been a match. If there's been no match, then we go to the next element, which is to create a record. If there has been a match, then the user wants to do it, we can actually have another data element, which is update records. So as with everything, make sure that you tie it all up. And I like to kind of lay mine out. I have a kind of a preferred way of laying stuff out, just to help me read stuff, but it's completely up to you. So save it. Yeah, we've done that. And then check, verify your step. So now you've got your flow, you've got your screen, you've got your query, and then you've put your logic in to say, now we're going down either one of 2 paths. And we're 75% of the way through the homework. Haha. Maybe this will help with the recruiting app, the final piece of the recruiting app. Anyway, so the next thing we have to do is use a create records element to create a new contact. This is the easy bit. So we're going to go back into our flow and we're going to drag create records. What are we going to call it? We're going to call it create contact. We're going to create one contact. We're going to use values from a record, and the record that we're going to do it from is our contact, which is the variable that we created at the beginning. And notice we're adding stuff to that throughout the process of this flow. The progress. Make sure the ID is blank. Yeah, okay, done. Okay, so click done and then connect it. So you connect it to your decision. So you go to decision, connect to create records, and then it will ask you what outcome should we be doing this for. So the outcome you want to use is create new and hit done. It's really nice and straightforward. So all it's going to do is if there's no match found, it's just going to create a record based on what you've put in as the contact information. The next thing you have to do is do your update. So we're going to pull in our update records. And I assume this is just going to be called set. No, I tried to get too clever. Apologies. So now we've created the records. We then have to use an assignment element because we need to actually give a contact ID to our record variable. So we've got to go and get the record ID of the existing contact and put it into the contact record variable. So we're going to pull in an assignment and we're going to put it here. The assignment is going to be called set contact ID. This will make sense when it's done. So our variable, is it going to be contact ID equals find a match ID? So in our record single variable, we go in here and we get our ID equals contact from find a match ID. Let me think about why we're doing this. Set the contact ID. So the contact ID from the contact we've used on the screen, we're saying, okay, I'm confused. Anyway, done. So in the elements tab, drag assignment onto the canvas. Okay, so let's build the path for the update existing. Ah, yes. So in this assignment, this is where we're telling the flow that when we go and update this existing record, this is the ID of the record that we're going to update. Okay, because at this point, the flow doesn't know. The flow has no idea that you're going to update a record yet at all. So it needs to know which one to do. And we're just going to take the ID that we've been working with for where it's found the existing result, where it's found it, because in our find a match get records element, we've actually gone to look for a contact where the first name and the last name match what's been put in the screen. And it's going to go and get the ID for that and store it into the variable that we're working with, which is the whole record, the whole contact record. Then in this section, we're saying when you want to update, if we're going down the route of updating because we found a match, we're going to take the ID that we found of the matching contact that we found. We're going to assign that to the new contact that we're about to create. Okay. No. So I think this is going to be connected to the decision. Yes, yes, it is for update existing. So drag it to here. And there you have it. So now it's finding the contact ID. There we go. A bit easier to read. Okay. Save as you go, please. And then finally, we're going to use an update records element to update that existing contact. So we're going to go and get our update records and drop it in here. And we're going to call it update contact. Right, use the IDs and all field values from a record or record collection. Yeah, so we're going to use it from contact, I believe. Yes, we are, because that's the existing set of fields and all that kind of stuff that we are going to use. So all we're doing is just updating. We're just saying whatever you've got in that contact record from earlier, just drop it into, just update the contact, override the fields that are on the contact with the fields that are in that variable. So then obviously join it up, please. Make sure you join it up. Oh, I can't get it all straight. Anyway, oh, it's straight. Nice. It says, remember, you don't have to understand much at this point. Okay. So verify the step. And now you've done it. You've done the prerequisite. So should we have a look at that final step on that original badge that we looked at and see if we can finish it off? Because I think we probably can in the last few minutes. Okay. That confetti's running down quite slow. Okay. So the next bit is we go on to our Flow Builder module. Which is where we were before. And we were on the step around adding screens to our flow with our challenge. Okay. This is where we were finishing off that final piece. So okay, so we're going to go and add a new screen. So open up the new contact flow that you created. We're going to add a new screen. And in our new screen is basically going to be a confirmation screen. So we're going to drag and drop it into here. Oh, where should it go? Okay. And what are we going to call it? We're going to call it confirm. And we're going to scroll or tab to the navigation and then deselect previous. Okay, fine. So we're not going to let people go back, basically. We're going to let people pause or go to next, but we're not going to let them go backwards. Then we're going to add a display text component, and we're going to call it confirmation_message. So component called again, display text. So start typing, drop it in. And we're going to call it confirmation message. Now here we can put in our own text here, or we can even bring in variables, information from variables, which is useful. Let's craft a message that thanks the user and confirms what the flow did. Now this flow has multiple branches because you've got the create branch or the update branch. And ideally you want like a thanks or it was created or thanks it was updated. So you could have one message that works for all possibilities, but this is a bit about UX, right? So if you put the contact was created or updated, it's easy, but the user's like, what? You can do a dynamic one, or you can do a separate one for each possibility. So we're actually, what they're saying is we can use a formula to actually figure out what to say, so which is far more scalable. The screen flow, the flow ends with one screen, but what's shown on the screen varies depending on which route, which branch everyone went down. So in this text box, what Trailhead is saying we can do is we can just enter in our text box, we can just put a placeholder in for now. And save. The next step that we're going to do is actually going to use an if function in order to figure out whether the flow created the contact or updated it. So which route did it go down? So we've got create contact. We have to look at the create records element, so we can actually say, did this happen, yes or no? And it's given us the formula expression as well, which is helpful. So what is it saying? So let's put this to work. So if we go into our display text component, you click in the search box above the text box. So in the screen, in your confirmation screen, in your display text, there's a little text, there's a search here. So what are we looking for? We are looking for a resource type of formula. We're going to create a new one. Resource type of formula. And the API name is going to be created I'm copying that. Created _or_updated. And then the data type is going to be text. And then it gives you the formula. So it's basically saying if your create contact element right. Okay. So it's saying if the flow actually if the record was went through the create contact element, then we say it was created, or we use the word updated. Okay. So let's put that in. If create contact equals created or updated, I'm just going to copy that into the chat, but if you want to, so you're not flipping around between screens too much. And then that becomes a merge field for your text. So you can actually change your text and say, thanks, the contact was, and then just display that formula, which is very scalable. Thanks, contact was, blah, blah. And that'll tell you which branch it went down. The final thing you have to do is add a link to your created or updated contact. So in your confirmation message, you can create a link using the ID of the contact record that you stored and just putting it onto the end. So to insert the formula, enter created and select the formula you created. Yeah. Let's add a link to the created or updated contact. You create a relative. So in the confirmation message, select the contact. This is making it very dynamic. So you can say like Joe Blogs was edited or Joe Blogs was created. So replace the contact with something else, which will be, select the contact. So then we click link here. Delete the existing text, Select the contact, then click the, hold on. Right, select the contact, then click link, and then take out the HTTPS. Oh, I'm learning quite a lot here. And then enter / contact ID. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, Jeremy. So Jeremy says, it seems strange that every place else we've learned to connect variables in something dot something has had us select from a list and essentially drill down, but not here. It's confusing. Yeah, well, actually, I think that's more down to like what I've been doing as well, is that, you know, with the formula, I would have preferred to use a formula, to use the drill down and go and select from lists and things like that. Yeah, there's just a slightly inconsistent teaching method here. So apologies for that. All we're doing here is we're actually saying, go and get the contact ID and give us a link to it. And it's smart enough to know that it's looking at the Salesforce server. So hit save. Okay, and click done. And then we can connect the screen later, it says. So hit done. So now we've got our confirmation screen. We will basically be connecting it up to create records and update records as our final step. But it looks like, okay, and then for the rest of this module, it wants us to build a brand new flow with opportunities, right? Okay, so I'm actually just going to hook this up because I want to see what happens. So save. Contact info includes lightning one time. Yeah, that's fine. Run. I want to find this. So I'm going to type in Mr. Benioff's name and hopefully it should update it because it should find it. So Mark Benioff. Account is Salesforce. And I'm going to tell it to update an existing one. It didn't work. and I can't go back. Okay, fine. Debug. Wonderful. And it's possible that it's, oh, hang on, no. Okay, so first name, let's do Gemma. Bezard. Get cloudy. If this already exists, update it. If not, create it. So hit next. Something went wrong. So now I'm looking, and I can look in the debug and see why it went wrong. I can see, okay, it selected a choice and it stored the values. That's good. The toggle happened fine. Then I selected the next. Then it did a lookup to find a match. So find all contact records where the first name, you couldn't find one, but it didn't actually go and create, because it's saying that it failed to access the value for contact first name because it hasn't been set or assigned. So, okay, well, that's one to troubleshoot then. Yeah, just like real life. So have a look if you can. So hopefully you've all been able to create your flows. If you haven't, then that's fine. Just have a go with your homework. If you want more, if you want to do some more stuff with flow, and it's perfectly understandable if you don't, that's fine. But there is another hands-on challenge here that you can do within the Flow Builder badge. Have a look through, work through it. There is a new activity to create a new opportunity flow. So by all means, have a go at doing that. I think we're going to wait and see if Howard's situation improves. Maybe get him to come in again and do a little bit more on it if you want to. Next week we are going to be looking at data importing, so that will be a fun one. And then I think what we might do is just what I would like to do is just understand if there's any more sessions that you would like us to cover. I'm not going to. I am going to keep going, but by the time we've done the data importing, you'll have done like most of the concepts, and we'll be ready to actually set you a project to do and to demo back to us. Does that sound all right to everyone? Yeah. Well done for getting this far, and thank you so much for not rage quitting halfway through this session. I really appreciate it. It is a complicated concept. It's fiddly. The terminology is weird as well, but you do get used to it, I can promise you. But it may, if you don't want to learn more about flow, that's also okay. So thank you for sticking with it. And I'll see you next week. Make sure you have a look at the website for homework. Take care and look after yourselves. Good night, everybody. Thank you for coming week after week.